Now there's a sixth one which is called the ird, and honor, which is added often. And most of them put that under nasab also, that it's your lineage is part of your honor. But here, these are the rules that prohibit slander, calumny, accusing people. This is why even if you see a person, you go into a room and there you see two people, they're not married, and something that shouldn't be happening is happening. It is haram for you to go and tell anybody. Haram. You have to veil them. And that relates to their right to honor. And part of the reason that you veil people is because if people become known for doing wrong things, tawbah is harder. Do you see what I mean? Because people will always see them as, oh, that's the guy that used to own the liquor store. Seriously, he might have made tawbah, but people will still bring up that years later. And I've seen this in Muslim communities. Somebody will literally make tawbah, and yet it will be brought up, Oh, by the way, did you know he used to own a liquor store? Right?
So what about this Qadi thing and 3 witnesses and...
4 witnesses?
4 witnesses. If you veil it, so we don't talk about that? You don't want to press charges if there's witnesses?
No, you don't want to press charges. You want to veil people.
For 4 simultaneous witnesses is not...
Almost impossible.
But if it is happening, you still want to veil it?
Yeah, it's a public act.
How could you be veiling that? That has to happen in public. Yeah.
4 people. And you have to, 4 people that actually see penetration. And the way it's described in the books is like the kuhul, the kohl, the oud, the stick that goes into the kuhul bottle. It has to be like the kuhul, the stick into the kuhul bottle. Or like the bucket into the well. That has to be seen by all 4 people. Can't just be a man on top of a woman. I mean, I don't know. I think, if somebody came into the room, the first thing they do is, shut the door and get out of there. They're not going to start going and investigating. Right? Let me make sure I'm seeing what I'm seeing is really happening. I just don't imagine that. And you have to have a very strange person that's going to, the Sharia is there to veil people. It's not there to expose people's faults. And the Prophet didn't want to hear it. A woman came and confessed to him. One man went to Abu Bakr and he said, I committed fornication. Abu Bakr said, did you tell anybody? He said, no. And he said, then don't tell anybody. Make tawbah. It was still bothering him. He went to Umar. Look what Umar said. Did you tell anybody? This is from the same school. Did you tell anybody? He said, Abu Bakr. What did he say? He said, don't tell anybody. Why are you telling me? Don't. Say astaghfirullah and don't tell anybody. And it was still bothering the man. He went to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet had the had punishment established, And in the one riwayah of the woman who was stoned, who confessed, she was stoned after giving birth, after nursing her child for 2 years. She still came back, and she was stoned. And somebody mentioned something about her, cursing her, and the Prophet said, don't curse that woman. If her blood was spilt across this city, all of the people in the city would be forgiven. In other words, that is a real tawbah. Right? So, and that's the thing, is those people wanted the punishment in this world, not that because if you have the had punishment, that's it in this world. It's finished. Whereas if you don't, you're in the Mashi'ah. Do you see what I mean? They were worried about, is this tawbah going to be accepted? So, and historically, there have been very few people that have been punished. And another thing about Sharia and confession, if a person leaves the pit, you have to stop. If they get out of the pit by their own volition, then you have to stop. You can't continue to stone them.
What about somebody who's still...
There's a pit in which they're stoned in. And if they leave the pit, the people have to stop. They can't stone them. They only stone them as long as they stay in the pit. If they leave the pit, they have to stop. Because confession is, Allah Ta'ala anam.
Is that complete?
That's Hajj, yeah.
Even though he left before.
What about somebody who steals? If you see somebody stealing, do you veil them or you scream?
Well, if you know that they've stolen.
If you see somebody...
No, you should stop somebody if you're able to. You should stop them from stealing.
You scream,
Stop, thief!
You do that.
Yeah. Sariq, sariq.
They're not tied down in the pit or held down?
No.
It's up to
Yeah. Very few people historically have been killed that way in the Muslim world. Really, very few people. And it was not a common. There's probably more nowadays. Like Arabia just does it too. Astaghfirullah, I don't want to go into that. Yeah, there's no had punishment now. There cannot be had without Khalifa. Khalifa establishes had. There's no had punishment. And the other thing is you can't establish had punishment in places where you have 80% unemployment. I mean, you can't, the Prophet said, "La qat'a fi maja'a." There's no cutting of hands when there's famine. Sharia is, you're not trying to harm people. It's when you have healthy society, that's when the hudud are being implemented. Not when societies are totally dysfunctional. I mean, I've heard people say, no, that would be impossible to do in America. Well, that's true. You have to radically alter the American society before it's ready for Sharia. Right? Really. It has to be completely, radically altered. Understandings have to change. I mean, people need to be honored. People shouldn't go hungry. That's a crime in itself, to have people in your society that are going hungry. That is a crime. Prophet ﷺ said, he does not believe the one who eats and his neighbor is hungry. That is not a believer.
So this makes the implementation of Sharia somewhat of an abstract concept at this point in time.
Absolutely. But it still has to be studied and understood for when the time comes. I mean, there always have to be people that know Sharia, whether it's being implemented or not. And the Prophet ﷺ told us that the first thing to go would be the hudud, the rules of governance. That would be the first thing it would go. He said it would go step by step till nothing remained but the prayer. And that's the time we're in now. We're just clinging to the prayer and to fasting. And we pay zakat out of conscientious behavior, not because we're forced to. In the olden days, they had zakat collectors came and you paid zakat.
But it's still a pattern for our lives, the Sharia. I mean, even though
that you can impose upon yourself, absolutely. I mean,
we shouldn't we?
Absolutely, yeah, to the best of our ability. But I can't, in America, I can't establish a had. If I have a community, I was in a community where a woman and a man did commit adultery, and there was a mufti there who was asked, Sheikh Shaybani, very excellent mufti with a lot of taqwa. He was asked what to do. He said, if she made tawbah, accept the tawbah. And just veil her and don't talk about it. That's what he said. Just veil her and accept the tawbah. Don't ostracize them, right? It's a bad time, part of this condition that we're in. So,
So with the Sharia courts and the countries, would they be wrong in passing?
Well, technically, if King Hassan is, he's the ruler of his country, and he's called Amir al-Mu'mineen in his country. That's what he calls himself, Amir al-Mu'mineen. What's that?
You said it has to be under a caliph?
Well, technically the ruler of a country, because even though the people of Sunnah and Jama'ah say that there should be one ruler, the Prophet indicated towards the end of time there would be many rulers. So technically, if a ruler did establish Sharia, like in Sudan, that is valid, that they do have that authority because they are a sultan. Because Islam prohibits anarchy. There always has to be some government. Even if it's a non-Muslim government, there has to be some governing body. You cannot have anarchy. Yeah, you can, there's some communities in this country that want to establish had. They can't do that. Then it becomes vigilantism. And who are they to do that? They don't have the authority by Sharia. Allah did not give us that authority. I mean, I can't just declare myself Khalifa of California, and take bay'ah with me, and then if somebody does something wrong, I tell some of the brothers, go out and, whip them. I can't do that. Right? I can't do that.
In California, it's possible.
Right, in California, right?